Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm Erich. I'm living in Switzerland. I'm talking from Switzerland.
Now, Erich, just for our younger audience, just explain a bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Well, in the meantime, I'm 75 years old. I'm married. I have 2 children. And of course, I have published so far 31 books. It all started with Chariots of the Gods, which was a world bestseller. In Chariots of the Gods, that was in 1968, I have come up with the theory that long time ago, in the past of mankind, we were visited by beings from outer space. Now, our ancestors at that time were Stone Age people. They did not realize what was going on. They had no idea about technology. So they misunderstood the extraterrestrials and believed that these beings are some kind of gods. So the gods entered into religions, into mythology and legends. That's the basic point.
Now, you've sold some 63 million books in total. Was it difficult with your initial first book, Chariots of the Gods, coming out? Was it difficult for it to be taken seriously?
It was very difficult to begin with because I was criticized all over the world. More or less, the whole scientific community crashed me down. But time has changed. You know, in the beginning, some 40 years or more ago, it was really impossible to think about space travel from star to star, because these are light years of distances. In the meantime, many astronomers and astrophysicists see a possibility how we could do this. In the meantime, 40 years ago, nobody was talking about genetics or genetic code or changing genetical code. I had all this already in my first book, in Chariots of the Gods. In the meantime, we do it. Every genetic can do it, can change the genetical code if he wishes, and if it's moral and ethic, and so on. So in the beginning, I was absolutely crashed down. But the situation has changed. In the meantime, I would say more or less the scientific community think it is quite possible what this Erich von Daniken said. We will not exclude it anymore, but it's my problem to bring some proofs. For the moment, all I have is indications, 1,000 wonderful indications, but I have not one complete proof. I have never found an extraterrestrial object which I could present to the scientific community.
So would you say then, Erich, that our history is wrong in a sense? And but if this is the case, then why haven't mainstream scholars come up with the same conclusions as yourself?
It's a question of our politics and especially of our religion. You see, we have many wonderful religions on our planet, and it all starts, these religions, with some gods. For example, we have the Old Testament, the Bible. Now there you can read, before the Lord of the Bible descends on the Holy Mountain, he gives order to Moses, to the prophet, to construct a gate around the mountain so that the people, the Israelites, would not be destroyed. So Moses constructs a gate, and then the Lord descends from heaven to earth with smoke and fire and loud noise and trembling and so on. Now Erich von Daniken comes and says, this was not God. This was something different. I suggest it was an extraterrestrial landing. Now, of course, the whole theologians in the world are against it. They have to be against it. They say, this is crazy what this von Daniken says. The Lord descended from the sky, not an extraterrestrial. And so you promptly have the controversy. Of course, you have to be attacked. When someone comes up with a theory like mine, he should never expect that the scientific community embraces him and kisses him and says, oh, that's wonderful, wonderful idea. First, we live in a democratic society, and the critic is okay. I have always accepted the critics.
So in your opinion then, Erich, would you say that the ancient gods were extraterrestrial rather than, supreme beings? Were they the gods of antiquity? Did they help us build the ancient civilizations? Did they help build the pyramids, in your opinion?
Yes or no. So it's complicated. You see, my suggestion is not that extraterrestrials, for example, created or constructed the Great Pyramid. It was always the humans who did these gigantic things. Question is always why? For what reasons, for example, have mankind in the past constructed gigantic pyramids, big temples, and so on? Now, the usual answer from the scientific community is, we did it because of religion. What religion? Normally, it's a natural religion. For example, our Stone Age people had no idea about the lightning, about the thundering. They could not understand the rising and up and down of the sun or the moon. So natural religions have occurred, and this is normal. But you have to make a big difference. In the ancient holy texts, so many of them, the so-called gods from antiquity gave information. There was information from up to down. There were exact speeches. So nature does not speech. The lightning, the thundering does not speech, give not orders. So somebody was talking. Who was this somebody who was talking? And there I came and say, these were the extraterrestrials. And really, in this sense, I have too many indications which cannot be disproved anymore.
Okay, and what were some of the promises that they made to our ancestors? What were some of the promises that the ancient gods made?
Promised our ancestors? Among the promises was, they will return. Now, every religion in the past, they had this expectation that somebody will return at some day. You see, when the Spanish conquerors arrived in today's Central America, the Mayas and the Aztecs, they were already expecting some gods to come. The same thing happened in South America. The Spanish conqueror Francisco Pizarro, when he arrived in today's Peru, the Incas believed that he was the long-expected God. The same thing in old Egypt. And still today, for example, I am educated as a Christian. The Christians are waiting of the recoming of Jesus. Or the Jewish community, since thousands of years, they are waiting for the returning of their Messiah. Or the Muslim society, they are waiting for the returning of their Mahdi. So not only in antiquity, also in our present days, humanity is waiting for somebody to return. And in antiquity, these extraterrestrials, they promised our forefathers, we will return. And they will return someday.
And just like you mentioned there, Erich, every religious textbook, the Quran, the Bible, the Jewish texts, they all talk about a return of a Messiah from the sky. But not every religion can be right, can it?
Of course not. None of those religions are right. They are all right in the one sense of expecting someone will come, but neither Messiah, neither Jesus, neither Mahdi, neither Osiris, none of them. Just and simply extraterrestrials will return. And this will be a shock for mankind.
And do you think our governments are preparing for their return?
I don't think. Normally, politicians are too stupid to think about these kind of things. They deal with today's problems, with finances and with elections and so on. They don't think in terms of philosophy.
Now, Erich, how will these beings return? And also, tell me about your idea of what you call a generation starship.
We really don't know how it will happen, but it will definitely happen someday. You see, thousands of years ago, the tribe of the Maya in Central America, they were visited by extraterrestrials. At least this is what they say in their fairy tales. And also the Mayas have a fixed date of the return of the god. If you transfer the Maya calendar into our calendar, the Maya calendar started on August 14, 3114 BC, and the Maya calendar will end on December 23rd, 2012. And according to Maya descriptions and Maya mythologies, on December 23rd, 2012, the gods will return from the sky. Now, how this will happen? In what form? What will we see? Is there a gigantic spaceship surrounding the Earth, or what will happen? We really don't know. There is no description about this.
Now, Erich, a lot of your work ties into 2012, and the problem that I see is that our calendars may be wrong. You know, we went from the year 1 BC to 180, we never had year zero. Also, scholars from Rome and Berkeley have determined that monks who were in charge of the Middle Ages of recording our calendars may have made mistakes.
I absolutely agree with you. You are perfect. Because nobody knows for sure if the transformation of the Maya dates, the Maya calendar, into our calendar is correct. So you never are sure if the date December 23rd, 2012 is correct. You are really not sure. We are not even sure about our own calendar. I mean, today while we are talking, we are counting the year 2010. That means 2010 years have passed since the birth of Jesus Christ. But we are not even sure of this. Maybe our calendar started 20 or 30 years later, and all the figures are wrong. So really, you cannot count on December 23rd, 2012, but you can definitely count of the return of the gods. Just nobody knows for sure when this will happen.
Now, in most 2012 movies, they'll show mass destruction. But in your opinion, you don't think that's going to happen, do you?
Well, you see, there's this gigantic movie going around from Roland Emmerich, 2012. And in this movie, the whole planet Earth is destroyed. Nothing about this is handed down in any old inscription, at really not to my knowledge. So the world will not be destroyed. What will be destroyed is our religion, maybe parts of our philosophical thinking, parts of our technology. For example, every reasonable astronomer is sure that there is no higher speed than the speed of light. Now, as soon as we get in contact with extraterrestrials, maybe they tell us, they teach us, of course there is a possibility of over speed of light. We just don't know it. Or since 20 or more years, we are looking for radio signals from extraterrestrials. Until today, to my knowledge, we have not received anything. Now maybe we are looking on the wrong way, on the wrong wavelength, etc. Soon as we have contact with extraterrestrials, we will ask them, how do you manage this? And then we have contact in the intergalactical radio. So it will be a change completely in technology, in moral, in ethics, in religion, etc. This is maybe some sort of a judgment day, but the planet Earth definitely will not be destroyed.
So in your opinion then, Erich, you don't think they have an agenda that we should be scared of?
No, I don't think so. If someone possesses the technology to travel light years, then he should not be primitive anymore in the sense of just shooting around.
Now, going back to Chariots of the Gods, do you think then that these ancient gods, or extraterrestrials as you would class them, do you think they helped create our culture?
Yes. Again, it's very complicated. We have not only been visited once in the past, we have been visited at least 3 times in the past. And the first visit, we have no idea when it was. They came to our planet, they realized that there are millions of forms of life. And one of the life forms was the most advanced, so to say, some of the apes, some of our ancestors. Now they took one exemplary, they simply took one cell of them and they changed the cell of it by genetical meaning, something which is easy to do. Every genetics does it today. Now this cell is put back into a sort of liquid of nourishment. The cell grows, and then it was implanted into the womb of a female of the same species. Now this female gave birth to a child. Of course, this child has the whole evolution. The child has the skeleton, has the bone, has the fingers, the arms, etc. But because of the artificial mutation, the child has something in plus what the rest of the tribe, of the ape tribe, for example, will not have. For example, the possibility to talk, the possibility to make culture, the possibility of songs, tools, etc. Now, soon as you want to have a new branch out of the tree, you need at least 2. You need female and male. And now you land in the legend of Adam and Eve. And God created Adam and Eve according his own image. Now this new population grow. After some thousands of years, the so-called gods, the extraterrestrials, returned again. And they realized what happened. and they made some changes. For example, with the Great Flood, they created even new beings according to all traditions, and I am very familiar with them. Even Noah, the one who survived the Great Flood, was the product of an artificial mutation. So it happened a changing 2 or 3 times in our past, which, by the way, does not contradict evolution. We are the child of evolution, but there was something artificial, something in plus during our growing.
Yeah, so you believe in evolution, but what you're saying is that, in your opinion, extraterrestrials help speed up our evolution.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, but what about those people who, believe in Darwin and would say that, Darwin's theory is right, closed case?
Yes, Darwin is absolutely right, except some artificial mutations which happened during the past of our growing. By the way, I have to excuse a little thing, my language. You see, I'm Swiss. I live in Switzerland. My first language is, of course, Swiss and German, and then French and Italian. And English is number 5. So from time to time, I have problems to understand your questions or to express myself. Please understand. Thank you.
No, don't worry, Erich. You're coming through nice and clearly, and we can understand what you're saying, so we just appreciate you being here. Now, one of the subjects I wanted to touch on as well is, we keep talking about the return of the ancient gods, the return of the ancient astronauts. But I say that they're already here because, what are all these UFO sightings that we've had for the past 60 years and more? Are these another race, or are they just observing us?
You see, if ethnologists, they go to a tribe somewhere in South Africa or America, they study the tribe. Maybe they help in a little few things. They tell them something, teach them a little, but then they leave again, the ethnologists. And after some years, maybe 10 or 20 years, they will return to see what happened. And in past, the same thing happened. These extraterrestrials created the first intelligent human. They disappeared again because they wanted to continue. They didn't want to live on our planet. And now, in a few thousand years later, they will return again to see what happens, just comparable to ethnologists. Now, as I said before, we don't know how this will happen, but it will happen. And I think it's much better to be prepared for such a possibility than to be completely shocked when it will happen. And that's, by the way, why I'm doing part of my job. I have many, many pictures in public, and I simply show the listeners and the audience some evidence, and I show them good evidence which exists. But at the end of every speech, I say, ladies and gentlemen, please do not believe this. I will not create a new religion or a new sect. It would be terrible for me. I would turn myself in my tomb if some idiots make out a new sect or a new religion out of what I think. But what I ask you, the audience, is please think about it. Try to follow me a little. Try to control a little. And many of the audience, also from the scientific community, they came finally to the similar explanation as I gave. We were visited by beings from outer space. There was an influence in the past, and they will return.
We say that disclosure's not happened. We say that governments are covering UFO secrets up. But with a great researcher like yourself, Erich, you have disclosed. You have put out there in the general public your information.
I know. Today we still have this problem with the UFOs. And of course, the real researchers know that many of UFOs are misinterpretations, are maybe false information or even falsificates. But still we have some very, very good cases in the UFO field. And now I am not a UFO researcher. My specialty is the visits from extraterrestrials in antiquity, while UFOs is a present problem. So I think we are observed again. But I could not tell you who is it, from which solar system are they coming. Is that just the preparation for the next visit? I cannot answer these questions. I simply don't know. I believe we are visited. Somebody is watching us.
You see, the problem is, Erich, that a lot of people, don't think that there's intelligent life out there. They feel that, this is as high as it gets being on this planet, this sort of level of intelligence. But you would say that they're wrong, wouldn't you? You would say that there is life throughout the universe.
No, no, no. There are millions and millions of intelligent forms of life out there. We are just one little part of it. We should learn to become more modest again. We always think that we are the crown of creation or we are the top of evolution. In my opinion, this is all rubbish. We are neither the crown of creation nor the top of evolution. We are just one of billions of intelligent forms of life out there. And sooner or later, we will have contact again with them.
So, Erich, why do you think your ancient astronaut theory has become more acceptable to talk about nowadays? When, compare it to the late 1960s, it was pretty much a taboo subject.
Well, the situation has changed. The scientific knowledge has changed. We know much more in the meantime as before. We have found and translated more old texts in the meantime as we had it in 1968. So, and the whole situation is different today at looking at those things than it was some 40 and 50 years ago. And by the way, there's not only Erich von Daniken who comes out with this theory. I know of many of my colleagues in different countries, in England, in the United States, who have published books with similar ideas and theories. Some of them are absolutely brilliant. So I'm not the lonely fighter anymore. Many others help to support this hypothesis.
Now, you would class yourself as a religious man, wouldn't you, as you've mentioned before? But having this belief in the ancient astronaut theory, this doesn't go against your religion, does it?
No. I was educated as a Catholic. And now just, let's say for 1 minute in my favor, think that Erich von Daniken would be right. So, okay, we were visited by extraterrestrials. So the next question has to be, where did they come from? What is their past, their evolution? Now you can go on and say they also were visited by another solar system. So, and where have they started, etc., etc. You can play back this game for billions and billions of years, and finally you arrive to a starting point. And there is the moment when you ask God, what is the creation? The creation of the universe, the spirit of the universe. So others call it God. I call it the grand spirit of the universe. Of course, I have no definition for God. No astrophysicist has it. But we know that in the beginning there was something which we cannot explain. So I have never lost my God. I am one of these few people who still pray.
Okay, well, now moving on, I want to talk about some of your research. And, you've researched so many different ancient sites in the world. One of them is Stonehenge. Now, where has your work took you with Stonehenge?
Well, first of all, Stonehenge is not only a gigantic circle of stones. Stonehenge is part of a geometrical pattern. It's part of a gigantic plan. It makes a big triangle, and then it turns to a long line, which in Britain they call Lee lines. Sometimes these Lee lines have hundreds of kilometers, and under the lines are always prehistorical holy places, like stone circles or graves of giants and something like this. So Stonehenge is a part of a planning system, but this geometrical pattern does not fit into the thinking of Stone Age people. They had no geometrical knowledge in this sense. For example, in French Brittany, there we have thousands of stones standing in exact lines. Definitely, there we have it to do with Pythagorean triangles. But Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, he lived around 450 BC, while these Stone Age things in French Brittany and in England, Stonehenge, are thousands of years older than Pythagoras, older than 450 BC. So somebody was planning, somebody was telling our primitive Stone Age people, okay guys, now you erect gigantic circles or stones. And why has this planner done this? Because of the future. The generations in the future, in the far future, should be upset, should realize something is wrong in our past. We see it here. There are stones in exact geometrical forms. Something is wrong. Now, the people of the future start to ask themselves, have we maybe been visited by extraterrestrials? Would this be an answer? Now you have a controversy about extraterrestrials. Sooner or later, humans accept it because we have the old traditions, we have the holy tales, we have the holy books, etc., and there we read the stories of extraterrestrials. So all this together, Stonehenge, French Brittany, places in old Greece, etc., including the old writings, bring mankind of the future to the question, what's wrong? Now you ask the question, have you been visited by beings from outer space? Soon as you say yes, then you come to the next question. Should these visitors not have left some kind of proof? I mean, some evidence, some message for us. They have not just disappeared like ghosts, leaving nothing behind it. And that's exactly the situation we have now. We have the indications from the past. Now we have the question. And now we should very sober and calm with scientific thinking go to solve the problem. Where is the proof? Where is the message of extraterrestrials? And sooner or later we will find it.
But the building blocks that were used, still can't be mimicked today, can they? With the equivalent of chicken string and bone.
I don't think so. Well, there are many theories in archaeology how it was done. But the question is not even for me, were they able to do it or not? Finally, they have done it. Stonehenge is a fact. It's here. But the question is, why have they done it? For what purpose? What was behind it and behind the planning? And not, were they able or not to do it? I still think, for example, a gigantic building like the Great Pyramid in Egypt was made by humans, not by extraterrestrials. But the extraterrestrials, they told them how to do it. They teach them in geometry, and they give them some help in their tools.
I mean, Erich, what about the theory that giants may have been involved in building these big structures?
I am nearly sure that giants existed in the past because we have too many traditions talking about giants, including in the Bible, by the way. But giants were rather the stupid ones in antiquity. They were not the high intelligence, the high IQ in the past. From giants, we have maybe buildings on the island of Malta, so primitive sort of temples, gigantic stone blocks, but not intellectual things like Stonehenge.
But do you think it's scientific enough for mainstream archaeology and scholars to, look at your work and just say that these temples and these ancient sites were just built to honor the gods? There wasn't anything deeper in it than that. Case closed.
No, not all of it. Of course, many of the temples and structures have nothing to do with extraterrestrials. They were simply created for natural religions, for the moon, for the sun, for the lightning, etc., what our forefathers was afraid of and could not understand. But the example is whenever talking comes into the place, for example, information was given. Some god was talking to the humans. Some gods, for example, in old times, explained to the Central American tribe of Maya, to their priest, how the earth turns around the sun in 365 days, etc. Or in the old book of Enoch. Enoch was one of the prophets before the great flood. And Enoch is the only one who gives the names of the extraterrestrials. We know who was doing what. So in that case, the teacher from heaven told Enoch exactly scientific things. How to make metal, how to mix metal, how about the moon, that the moon has no light by itself, that the light of the moon comes from the sun, etc., etc. In all these cases, you have information given by someone to our primitive Stone Age people. And in that case, natural religion helps nothing.
Now, I know that you've done a lot of research into the ancient Nazca lines, so while we're still on this theme of ancient structures and pyramids, let's talk about ancient carvings in the ground. Now, tell me about your research, obviously, into the Nazca lines in Peru, and, were they ancient symbols to represent the gods, or were they actual aerial directional indicators for a craft that may have been landing and to be guided in?
Of course, Nazca is my special field. I have a whole book about Nazca, but I don't have too much time anymore. Now listen, Nazca is in South America, is in Peru, is about 500 kilometers south of Lima. In the meantime, when you go from Lima to Nazca, it's a highway, so it's fantastic. Some 20 years ago, it was just a road, not even a road, a pista going through the desert. Soon as you are in the ground of Nazca, you see nothing. An usual desert with sand and small brown stones. But then you go into a small aircraft and you fly over Nazca. And of a sudden you see beneath you gigantic figures. Figures like fishes, monkeys, spiders, and so on. And then but all of such overdimensional size that you can see them only from the air. On the ground you see nothing. Then you fly higher. And the next thing you realize are gigantic lines. Lines, they look from the air like an airstrip. By the way, I never said it was an airstrip, but it looks like an airstrip. The lines start abruptly, end abruptly. The longest is 3.8 kilometers long. So when you fly over Nazca, you have a mixture of different things. The one thing are figures, the other things are the lines who look like airstrips, and the third thing are small lines, about 1 meter large, but they are 23 kilometers long, straight away, crossing over hills and mountains, and nobody understands what this is. Now, I think it was all a cult. You see, an extraterrestrial spaceship who is hundreds and hundreds of years on the way, they measure, for example, our planet, because they see a solar system, they see that this planet number 3, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, so it makes sense to come close of it, simply to observe are their life forms and how advanced are they. Now these extraterrestrials, they will probably go into an orbit with their mother spaceship around the Earth. And after a journey of hundreds and hundreds of years, they need definitely energy. I don't know what kind of energy, be it raw material, be it uranium, whatever. They need energy because after some hundreds of years, they are down with their energy. They must fuel. Now, some automatic station will realize down on the Earth, in what we call today Peru, there is a desert. And this desert has the raw material which they urgently need. Now, they send down simply a robot. And the robot comes down into the desert of Nazca, and as deeper he comes, before he touches the ground, sand, small stones are blown away, and a simple line appears in the desert because of the landing of the robot. Now this robot starts to make some measurements. Do we find the raw material, and how, in what quality is the raw material, etc. And the robot disappears again. But 1 or 2 natives have observed what was happening, and they cannot understand what was happening. In their eyes, something has descended from heaven and was on the ground and left a small line behind. So this something must be the gods, some sort of gods. Now this man or these people who observed it, they run to their tribe and they say, we saw it with our own eyes. It descended here. It left a line behind. And now the priests start to think, well, these gods showed us lines, so we must start to make lines. And now the natives start to make lines, all in honors of the gods. And of course, they always accept the return of the gods. And one day, some priest may have a brilliant idea. A priest always have brilliant ideas. And he say, we must show these gods up there in the sky that we have offerings from them. And now they create in the ground some animals of fishes and monkeys and whales and whatever. So it was all a cult made by the natives, but cult for the gods. Because all these lines, all these figures, you can only see from the air. When you are on the ground, you see absolutely nothing. But the starting point for this cult was in fact first the landing of some extraterrestrial robot to test what kind of raw material they would find here. I have only about 5 minutes. I have to run away.
Okay, Erich, just a couple more questions before we have to end this interview then. Now, one of your good friends that passed away this year was Zachariah Sitchin. Now, he had looked into research on the 12th planet, the Sumerian Texas, and the Anunnaki. Now, how did all his research fit into what you had discovered?
Well, we have been friends all the time, and we adored each one other, although we have in some point different ideas. I never accepted the idea of Zachariah Sitchin of the 12th planet, because we have no other planet in our solar system. If we would have one, we would have measured it long time ago. But I absolutely agree with Zachariah Sachin with his translation from the old Sumerian cuneiform text into our language. So this was absolutely his fantastic work he did. And I'm afraid, you said that he passed away. We just 3 or 4 weeks before he passed away, we were together on a radio show by phone in the United States.
And has Roswell ever come up in your research as well?
Of course, but Roswell is modern. Oh, you know, this story in Roswell happened in 1974, and about 20 or 25 years time ago, I always thought Roswell is a fake. That's all garbage. But then I was in Roswell in person. I had a speech there, and I had the opportunity to talk to some people who were in the meantime old people, but in 1947, when Roswell happened, they were young. And they explained me what happened at that time. And in the meantime, I completely have changed my mind. I believe we had an extraterrestrial crash in Roswell, but the society, the CIA or whatever, was not fair enough or not able to give this to the public.
And lastly, Erich, I mean, what important points do you want people to take away from your books?
First of all, just become modest again. We have to learn. We are neither the crown of creation nor the top of evolution. We are just one teeny part of billions of intelligent forms of life out there. Sooner or later, we will have contact again with them. And sooner or later, and I would suggest within the next 50 years, some extraterrestrials will land on Earth. So it makes sense. It is fair to be prepared for such an event. It is better than to be shocked. But all this has nothing to do with the new religion and the new sect. Do not believe it. Just try to control whatever is possible you can control.
Well, Erich von Daniken, thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye, and thank you for the interview.